Hello students, welcome to the lecture on EXIM principles and transactions, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Understand the United Nations Commission in International Trade Law, UNCITRAL. Explain the International Bill of Exchange. Understand the function of the Bill of Exchange in international trade. Discuss the letter of credit. Explain the step-by-step process of letter of credit. Explain the types of letters of credit. Understand the risks in letters of credit. Let's start with a brief introduction to the topic EXIM principles and transactions. Context of new foreign trade policy. Trade is not an end in itself, but a means to economic growth and national development. The primary purpose is not the mere earning of foreign exchange, but the stimulation of greater economic activity. For India to become a major player in the foreign trade policy is built around two major objectives. These are to double the percentage share of global merchandise trade within the next 5 years and to act as an effective instrument of economic growth by giving a thrust to employment generation. The thrust sectors shall be extended the following facilities. Agriculture. A new scheme called the Vishesh Krishi Upaj Yojana, Special Agricultural Produce Scheme, for promoting the export of fruits, vegetables, flowers, minor forest produce and their value-added products has been introduced. Handlooms. Specific funds would be earmarked under MAI MDA scheme for promoting handloom exports. Duty-free import entitlement of specified trimmings and embellishments shall be 5% of FOB value of exports during the previous financial year. Handicrafts. New handicraft SEZs shall be established, which would procure products from the cottage sector and do the finishing for exports. Gems and jewelry. Import of gold of 18 carat and above shall be allowed under the replenishment scheme. Duty-free import entitlement of consumables for metals other than gold, platinum shall be 2% of FOB value of exports during the previous financial year. United Nations Commission in International Trade Law, UNCITRAL. Member states of the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, UNCITRAL, together represent the different legal, economic and social systems and geographic regions of the world. Structured to ensure that the various geographic regions and the principal economic and legal systems of the world are represented, the 60 member states include 14 African states, 14 Asian states, 8 Eastern European states, 10 Latin American and Caribbean states, and 14 Western European and other states. The General Assembly elects members for terms of 6 years. Every 3 years, the terms of half of the members expire. Organization and methods of work. UNCITRAL's work is organized and conducted at 3 levels. The first level is UNCITRAL itself, often referred to as the Commission, which holds an annual plenary session. The second level is the intergovernmental working groups, which to a large extent undertake the development of the topics on UNCITRAL's work program. The third is the Secretariat, which assists the Commission and its working groups in the preparation and conduct of their work. International Bill of Exchange. A bill of exchange is one of the key financial instruments in international trade. The laws regulating bills of exchange in different countries come under 2 different legal spheres of influence. Bills of Exchange Act 1882, United Kingdom Geneva Conventions of 1930. The Bill of Exchange is defined under these systems as follows. Bill of Exchange Act 1882, United Kingdom. A bill of exchange is an unconditional order in writing addressed by one person to another, signed by the person giving it, requiring the person to whom it is addressed to pay on demand or at a fixed or determinable future time a sum certain in money to or to the order of a specified person or to the bearer. The parties to a bill of exchange. The drawer. It is the party that issues a bill of exchange in an international trade transaction, usually the seller. The drawee. It is the recipient of the bill of exchange for payment or acceptance in an international trade transaction, usually the buyer. The payee. It is the party to whom the bill is payable, usually the seller or their bankers. The function of the bill of exchange in international trade. The bill of exchange performs many functions in international trade, including facilitates the granting of trade credit in a legal format by permitting payments on agreed future dates, provides formal evidence of the demand for payment from a seller to a buyer, provides the seller with access to finance by permitting them to transfer their debts to a bank or other financier by merely endorsing the bill of exchange to that bank or financier, permits the banker or financier to retain a valid legal claim on both the buyer and the seller. In certain circumstances, a bank or financier may have a stronger legal claim under a bill than the party that sold them the debt, permits a seller to obtain greater security over the payment by enabling a bank to guarantee a drawee's acceptance, guarantee to pay on the due date by signing or endorsing the bill, allows a seller protect their access to the legal system in the event of problems while providing easier access to that legal system. Advantages of bills of exchange. Companies have used bills of exchange for hundreds of years. Their longevity is due to the advantages they provide in a trading transaction. Bill of exchange facilitates the granting of trade credit to a buyer. Bill of exchange provides a legal acknowledgement that a debt exists. It can provide the seller with access to financing. It can provide easy access to the legal systems in the event of non-payment. Letter of credit. A written commitment to pay by a buyer's or importer's bank, called the issuing bank, to the seller's or exporter's bank, called the accepting bank, negotiating bank, or paying bank. A letter of credit guarantees payment of a specified sum in a specified currency, provided the seller meets precisely defined conditions and submits the prescribed documents within a fixed time frame. Although letters of credit come in numerous types, the two most basic ones are revocable credit letter of credit and irrevocable credit letter of credit, which comes in two versions: confirmed irrevocable letter of credit and not confirmed irrevocable letter of credit. Confirmed letter of credit. A letter of credit is always sent by the buyer's bank to the seller's bank or any bank that becomes an advising bank. Revocable and irrevocable letter of credit. Normally, the letter of credits issued is irrevocable, which means that no single party can unilaterally make any changes to the LC unless it is mutually agreeable to both the parties involved. Cite LC. When the LC is opened, stipulating the condition that on presentation of the negotiable set of shipping document by the seller as per the terms of the LC are made, the buyer's bank will make payment at sight, meaning immediately to the seller's bank, subject to fulfillment of terms and conditions of the LC being fulfilled. The LC is called sight LC. Future or credit LC. If the payment schedule under the said LC stipulates payment at certain future dates after presentation of negotiable set of shipping documents by the seller and fulfilling the LC terms and conditions, Such an LC is termed future LC or credit LC. Step-by-step process of letter of credit. The following is a step-by-step description of a typical letter of credit transaction. An importer and exporter agree on a purchase and sale of goods where payment is made by letter of credit. The importer completes an application requesting its issuing bank, to issue a letter of credit in favor of the exporter. The issuing bank issues the letter of credit and sends it to the advising bank by telecommunication or registered mail in accordance with the importer's instructions. The advising bank will verify the letter of credit for authenticity and send a copy to the exporter. Issuance of a letter of credit. The exporter examines the letter of credit to ensure it corresponds to the terms and conditions in the purchase and sale agreement. Documents stipulated in the letter of credit can be produced, and the terms and conditions of the letter of credit may be fulfilled. If the exporter is unable to comply with any term or condition of the letter of credit, or if the letter of credit differs from the purchase and sale agreement, the exporter should immediately notify the importer and request an amendment to the letter of credit. When all parties agree to the amendments, they are incorporated into the terms of the letter of credit and advised to the exporter through the advising bank. It is recommended that the exporter does not make any shipments against the letter of credit until the required amendments have been received. The exporter arranges for shipment of the goods, prepares and/or obtains the documents specified in the letter of credit, and makes demand under the letter of credit by presenting the documents within the stated period and before the expiry date to the available with bank. The issuing bank examines the documents to ensure they comply with the letter of credit terms and conditions. Documents are delivered to the importer to allow them to take possession of the goods from the transport company. Advantages and disadvantages of using a letter of credit. Advantages to the importer. Importer is assured that the exporter will be paid only if all terms and conditions of the letter of credit have been met. Importer is able to negotiate more favorable trade terms with the exporter when payment by letter of credit is offered. Disadvantages to the importer. A letter of credit does not offer protection to the importer against the exporter shipping inferior quality goods and/or a lesser quantity of goods. Consequently, it is important that the importer performs the appropriate due diligence to assess the reputation of the exporter. If the exporter acts fraudulently, the only recourse available to the importer is through legal proceedings. It is necessary for the importer to have a line of credit with the bank before the bank is able to issue a letter of credit. The amount outstanding under each letter of credit issued is applied against this line of credit from the date of issuance until final payment. Note: added protection to the importer may be provided by requesting additional documentation in the letter of credit. Example, a certificate of inspection. Advantages to the exporter. The risk of payment relies upon the credit worthiness of the issuing bank and the political risk of the issuing bank's domicile and not the credit worthiness of the importer. Exporter agrees in advance to all requirements for payment under the letter of credit. If the letter of credit is not issued as agreed, the exporter is not obligated to ship against it. Exporter can further reduce foreign political and bank credit risk by requesting confirmation of the letter of credit by a Canadian bank. Disadvantages to the exporter. Documents must be prepared and presented in strict compliance with the requirements stipulated in the letter of credit. Some importers may not be able to open letters of credit due to the lack of credit facilities with their bank, which consequently inhibits export growth. Types of letters of credit. There are two types of letters of credit, revocable and irrevocable. A revocable letter of credit can be revoked without the consent of the exporter, meaning that it may be cancelled or changed up to the time the documents are presented. An irrevocable letter of credit cannot be cancelled or changed without the consent of all parties, including the exporter. Unless otherwise stipulated, all letters of credit are irrevocable. Other types of letters of credit. Back-to-back letter of credit. When one letter of credit is used to secure the issuance of another letter of credit, the parties are said to be dealing with a back-to-back letter of credit transaction. In a back-to-back letter of credit scenario, the intermediary party would receive and be the beneficiary of a letter of credit from its customer that has agreed to purchase goods. Transferable letter of credit. A transferable letter of credit is used in cases where there are three parties to a transaction as described in the back-to-back letter of credit transaction: an importer, exporter, and an intermediary party such as a broker who is responsible for arranging the sale. Risks in letters of credit. Risks in letters of credit can be discussed under four groups: general risks in letters of credit, risks to the applicant, risks to the beneficiary, and risks to the banks. General risks in letters of credit. Following are the general risks: country risk, political risk. The first risk factor that can be mentioned in the general risk group is the country risk or the political risk. Fraud risk. As we have described before, all conditions stated in a letter of credit must be connected to a document. Otherwise, banks will disregard such a condition. In addition, banks deal with only documents but not goods, services, or performance to which the documents may relate. Risks to the applicant. In a letter of credit transaction, main risk factors for the applicants are non-delivery, goods received with inferior quality, exchange rate risk, and the issuing bank's bankruptcy rate. Risks to the beneficiary. In a letter of credit transaction, main risk factors for the beneficiaries are unable to comply with letter of credit conditions, counterfeit LC, issuing bank's failure risk, and issuing bank's country risk. Risks to the banks. Every bank in a LC transaction bears risks more or less. The risk amount increases as responsibility of the bank increases. Summary. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learnt in this lecture. The new policy envisages merchant exporters and manufacturer exporters, business and industry as partners of government in the achievement of its stated objectives and goals. The new EXIM policy is essentially a roadmap for the development of India's foreign trade. United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, UNCITRAL, established by the United Nations General Assembly by its resolution 2205-21 of 17 December 1966. Both annual UNCITRAL sessions and working group sessions are conducted on the basis of documentation prepared by the Secretariat and distributed to United Nations member states before each session to allow time for consideration. Although letters of credit are a balanced payment method in terms of risk issues for both exporters and importers, each letters of credit party bears some amount of risk.